Hello everyone, I'm your narrator from Grave Hush, and I'm here to help you unwind tonight. I know many of you use these stories to fall asleep. So before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where in the world are you listening from? And what time is it for you right now? Now get cozy, take a deep breath, let your body sink into the stillness. It's time to relax and let the story carry you into sleep. Our first story tonight. Let's begin. There is a song only I can hear. As a child, I used to walk along the Seine River holding my parents' hands. They looked at me with kindness and spoke to me softly. But my thoughts often wandered. Dad, Mom, can you hear that song? My father frowned. My mother said, "Sweetie, it's in your head. We've already told you." And yet I trusted my senses. I may have had a vivid imagination, but this song was real. It wasn't a harmonious melody. It was a dark, pulsing litany, a cryptic whisper that drifted through the air, heard only by those with keen ears. It came from the ground. It rose from the manhole covers. Sometimes curiosity overcame fear, if only for a moment. So when my parents weren't looking, I'd kneel down and press my ear to the ground to better catch the muffled words. Then I would listen. You call this place Paris. We don't call it anything. There's nothing special about it. It is unworthy of a name. Beneath the city, your struggles are stripped of all meaning. In the catacombs, all bones taste the same. To you, Paris is love and longing, storms and drizzle. For us, it is a maze of chasms and tunnels, repulsive to you, but a refuge to us. It is our maze, and in this maze, we are the monster. A monster with 10 million eyes that glow in the dark. As a child, I always wanted a little dog. I would have named him Snoopy and loved him with all my heart. Every day I pestered my parents to buy me one, but we had neither the space nor the means. In our dilapidated building, our cramped apartment was no place for Snoopy, but my parents wanted to see me happy. One day when I came home from school, I found them at the front door with gleeful smiles. Dad had his hands behind his back. "Here." He handed me a cardboard box with holes in the sides. It was way too small for a dog. I could hear scratching coming from inside. "Look inside." Warily, I lifted the lid and peeked inside the box. A rat! Yuck, I wanted a dog. "But son, we already discussed this. We can't have a dog. But a little rodent doesn't take up any space and it will cost us less." It was always like this. I wouldn't be getting any new shoes. I'd have to keep my threadbare sneakers for a long time. It would cost them less. By that logic, I would have a rat instead of Snoopy. As if she had heard my thoughts, Mom added, "We did some research, you know. They're very intelligent animals and they're affectionate too. You'll learn to love it." I glanced at the box again, but this time curiosity had been replaced by disgust. The rat stared at me with its beady eyes. It stood up on its hind legs, its whiskers twitching. Why not, after all, I thought to myself. I'll call it Snoopy. Over the next few days, I got to know him. He was really smart. He liked being on my shoulder. He loved watermelon and the heavy metal I blasted in my room, much to my parents' despair. He didn't like silence and hated my sister. It didn't matter much. There was always noise in the house and the feeling was mutual. And then in the evening, lying on my bed, I would sometimes let him out of his cage. He would nestle in the crook of my shoulder, and once again I would hear the song. "You hate us draped in your pride, we your children. To hear you talk, we are filthy and vile, vicious and cruel, we who dare to share your city. When we come out of our hiding places at night, you look down on us and turn away. What have we done to deserve such contempt? You feed us the leftovers from your feasts. You shelter us in your narrow tunnels and damp caves. We do not hate you. On the contrary, we believe we live in harmony with you. In fact, we pity your pompous displays and hollow debates. You are no better than us, but unlike you, we know our place. Excellent work, once again. My teacher handed back my test with a satisfied smile. I wore a triumphant grin. I was starting to get used to compliments. At first, I didn't understand how my classmates could be so mediocre. Were they not capable of thinking? Didn't the answers seem as clear to them as they did to me? Then I came to realize that their narrow minds were nothing like mine. They stumbled over things that were obvious to me. The ones I found most amusing or most tragic were the serious students. Not those who were incapable because they didn't even try, but on the contrary, those who threw all their strength into the battle and still came out defeated. They were just limited, doomed to jobs that matched their small minds, condemned to bland relationships and to lives so unremarkable they would fade without a trace. But I was better than them. I had to be. I would achieve greatness. Soon, at the end of my senior year, I would go to college and leave my idiotic peers wallowing in their own mire. I would leave behind this mediocre high school that was crawling with rats. You keep going on about how reasonable and rational you are, and your reason, invincible and absolute, justifies violence, excuses all excesses. Who are the true beasts? Are we the ones who destroy everything we touch? In truth, for us, you are the beast. Here's my favorite bookworm again. I like the librarian. She was a large, cheerful woman with small, laughing eyes set deep in their greasy sockets. If you only knew how happy it makes me to see a young man like you here all the time. My son never gets off his phone. I wasn't really listening. I liked her, but she didn't really interest me. What did was the heavy pile of books I had placed on her desk. Applied chemistry. Hey, you're not here to joke around. My son only reads manga when he actually reads anything. Her son seemed like a complete idiot. Then again, when you're the son of a librarian, you're not likely to be anything special. But I was different, I was sure of it. Getting into university only confirmed it. I was soon going to leave my rotten apartment building and its stinking hallway. I was going to make money and become someone. But to do that, I had to read. Rich kids have everything they need to succeed. They go to the best schools and have the best private tutors. All I had was rage. I was furious at being a nobody and living like an animal. I deserved better than that. I wasn't condemned to wait for the end of the month, but to do that, I had to read. Books hold so much knowledge, everything humanity has ever learned. But not everything can be found in books. There is a litany, a secret never written until now. And the lyrics go, "We know no glory. You like to show off, but we prefer to hide. The light blinds us, the noise deafens us. We prefer silence, barely disturbed by the lapping of the sewers. In this silence, in this darkness, our senses are more acute. We are more lucid. We are the forgotten masters of this world beneath yours. Here, nothing disturbs our work." Inappropriate formula. I carefully noted my observations in my notebook. Subject number 138 is reacting poorly to the product. That was putting it mildly. The rat was writhing in pain, whimpering softly. It hated me. The formula I was testing was a new compound for an expensive lipstick that was both phosphorescent and waterproof. For pool parties of all things. It was absurd, but it paid well. I would have liked a job with more meaning that made me feel truly useful. But for now, I was content with this one. In fact, I had done pretty well for myself. I had become a scientist, joining the ranks of those who knew all the secrets. I was just a beginner, but I could already see the brilliant career that awaited me, rewarding all my efforts. I glanced at the cage. The rat had stopped whimpering and was lying sprawled on the floor. I felt sorry for it. It reminded me of Snoopy. But pity didn't pay rent. Mechanically, I sprayed a new substance on it. In agony, the rat writhed pitifully. If it could speak in human tongues, it would beg for its torment to end. Between its teeth, its whimpers became a song that the indifferent human on the other side of the wall had long since forgotten. In its last moments, the rat whispered. Feverishly, you built mountains, drained seas, and blackened the sky. Every marvel bears its horror. So that your sinister work would not collapse, you build its mirror underground. This is our world. You created us, and when you'll grow tired, we will rise. You're fired. I stood frozen, arms limp. It was true, I had screwed up. One of the cages was poorly secured, and of course a rat had escaped. Of course it had happened when the CEO of the company, the Great Feathered Chief, as we like to call him, was visiting the laboratory with his wife, an obese woman clearly bored out of her mind. I explained my work to them, but of course they didn't understand a thing. It was all staged, a show. The big boss, in his immense magnanimity, came to bestow his blessing on the little lab technician under the satisfied gaze of the lab director. But the little lab technician had noticed out of the corner of his eye that something was wrong. Cage number 3 was empty, the door ajar. Too late. Subject number 227 climbed up the leg of the CEO's wife, who began to scream. Michael! Michael was the CEO. Do something! The husband was paralyzed. He had never learned how to handle such a situation during his marketing studies. I still remember his wife's screams. She sounded like a pig being slaughtered. She looked a lot like a pig, actually. The rat continued its race, slipped under her loose dress, and bit her thigh. She looked ready to faint. Michael, I'm going to die of leptospirosis. With that, she actually fainted and fell heavily to the floor. The rat, a little dazed, slipped between our legs and disappeared. The CEO glared at me. The lab director had taken 3 cautious steps back, as if that would spare him. And the next day I found myself in his office. He continued his tirade. I wasn't really listening. Do you think the company can afford to keep dead weight like you around? There was one day when there couldn't be a single mistake. One day. And you screwed up. I knew that. I had already thought about it myself. Not content with firing me, the director was taking advantage of the opportunity to humiliate me. Fine. Do you have any idea of the consequences of your negligence? The CEO has threatened to close the lab. I didn't care anymore about the decisions of the Great Feathered Chief. You're a loser, a nobody. You're no better than your precious rats. I smirked slightly. I had to admit that the director had a way with words. And that makes you laugh? Get out of here. Without a word, I turned on my heel and slammed the door of his office. In a corner, someone had been watching the scene. It was subject number 227. He didn't quite understand what had happened. Human stories are obscure to those of his species. He only knew the stories of rats. And those stories say, we know neither joy nor sorrow. You cling to them to feel alive. That is what your world is. A cell lined with mirrors whose reflections feed your delusions of grandeur. Elena had left me. I always knew she was only there for the money. At first, she comforted me. She let me cry on her shoulder. The director is an idiot anyway. With your resume, you'll find a job in no time. And then, with every rejection, I felt her gaze harden, her caresses fade, my motivation wane. Our love was slipping through my fingers. It wasn't for lack of trying to find a job, but it seemed that the world no longer needed chemists. I was given the same excuses every time. You're too young, you don't have enough experience. There are candidates with better qualifications. That first job in the lab was my only chance to shine, and subject number 227 had ruined everything. I missed Elena. I poured another drink. My booze-fueled nightmares made me forget so much, but a glimmer remained, a melody that never stopped playing. We don't know love. When one of us dies, it's because deep down they deserved it. No one mourned him. Another will soon take his place. That's the way it is. Drink, drink, and drink some more. Drink to forget the shame, to numb the soul and defeat the mind. I drank to fall asleep, not knowing what broken dreams awaited me on the other side. The sunrises all looked the same. I stopped counting them. Each week that passed widened a hole in my resume that was becoming increasingly difficult to justify. The sun continued its course, the months flew by, and next to my dirty mattress, the bottles piled up. These were my meager savings that I was drinking away. I preferred not to think about it. Sometimes I told myself I would stop drinking. To celebrate this sudden burst of motivation, I opened one last bottle. The last one, I promised myself, but inevitably that last bottle was the first of many more as I kept drowning myself. We love to dance. We dance to your ruin, we dance to your downfall. It's a frenzied dance that you know nothing about, but it's there, close by, right under your feet. It accompanies our song, which itself becomes cloaked in dark lyrics. Here falls the crown, here sinks the throne, and down under in the deeps the king shivers as the light dims. Oh, how we love to dance. Two burly men carried away my desk beneath the bailiff's stern gaze. It was the way things had to be. I had to repay the creditor who had enabled me for a time to pay the grocer who supplied me with spirits. I felt only emptiness and disgust. Above all, disgust at my inglorious fate. At the same time, the world owed me nothing. When the sun rose, it knew nothing of my pain. When it set, it was deaf to my cries. I found myself alone in my empty apartment, which I could no longer afford to pay for. I didn't even feel thirsty anymore. I needed something else to numb my senses. Music, perhaps. We don't own anything. Each of us is content with our 4 legs and claws and our millions of brothers and sisters. Because we own nothing, we hoard nothing but the number of our kin, which grows day by day. Soon 20 million eyes will stare at you from the abyss. As usual, I don't understand a word Craquito says. Craquito is my homeless pal. At least that's what I call him. He probably has a name, but with his toothless mouth, he can no longer say it. I like him. He shares my pain under the bridges of Paris. It all happened so fast. Without the lab, without Elena, without a roof, and without a penny to my name, I'm holed up in the shadow of a bridge, a bit like a rat. All I have left is this notebook. Writing demands nothing. All you have to do is talk to the paper, so here I am, writing down my bland existence. While I'm at it, I'll add the lyrics to the song. I know it is insane. A feverish dream I've held on to for too long. A melody that has foretold my downfall since childhood. But it's so beautiful, this song, without verses or rhymes, without a chorus or refrain. I know it's real, even if only I can hear it. It no longer frightens me. I have learned to love it, and today it lulls me to sleep. We have no laws. We do not need them. Our only creed is that of the multitude, of the formless legion that swarms in the sewers. Alone our fangs and claws are powerless. Together, slowly but surely, we are gnawing away at the foundations of your empire. We have no masters. Sometimes we have kings. When some of us, too stupid, too greedy, argue and fight, they get their tails tangled up and become bound together in their vice. Panicked, they try to escape. They pull and they run out of breath, but their efforts are in vain and the knot tightens. Then, obese and weak, the king wastes away, his pitiful reign ending in a feast at his own expense. We have no God. Perhaps God created us. Perhaps he cares about us. We prefer to think that he has forgotten us. And we, in our tunnels far from his light, have learned to ignore heaven. The Seine River calls me. Its surface is shiny, mesmerizing, slightly rippled by opposing currents. It hums a low, familiar tune. I see above me the tangle of bridges that line it. I imagine them passing over my head. The Pont des Arts, the Pont Royal, the Pont de la Concorde. The city is so beautiful at night. So many famous people have walked on its cobblestones. I am not one of them. The song grows louder. I wish I could hear it better. I can't resist much longer. I've transcribed the contents of my notebook for you. I don't really know why. Rereading it, I remember so many things. I remember my mother's voice, the evenings of my childhood spent bored, playing with the few toys my parents had been able to give me. I remember Snoopy, who brought me some comfort. I remember the evenings spent watching him, the rat in his cage, and the human in his. I remember the lab and the daily torture I inflicted on my subjects. They must be laughing now, seeing me here. Maybe they're dancing. I remember the bailiff who took everything from me with the same indifference I showed my lab rats. I remember the words of the song. They used to terrify me. I tried for a long time to ignore them, to forget them, to silence them, but today the song is louder than ever. I feel like I understand it now. It wants me to follow it into the Seine. It tells me I have no choice. I have to join my kin. We are not a model, let alone a metaphor. We are like you, minus the frills. You are nothing but well-groomed rats. We are what you refuse to be out of pride or blindness. You created us in your image. Tomorrow no one will notice me among the rats. Story 1 ends here. Now, let's begin story 2. I've always wanted to stay at the Belvedere. Now I think it wants me to stay too. Mr. Macklin jumped from the top floor of the Belvedere. He was found no more than a splatter on the pavement, his crisp suit hiding a pretzel of shattered bones. The twisted state of the man's body could not detract from his eyes, frozen in a sudden and all-encompassing terror before their brightness clouded over. The doorman hurried to rush the body away before the morning crowd could stumble upon it. but there were too many factors to consider and too little time. The blood had seeped from the man's threads, pooling upon the pavement. There was the sound of the collision, the fissure it had left. All of the fluids accumulated like a lake, seeping into every crack and pore. An impact like that could not simply be scrubbed away. It was found and never forgotten. There are claims that in gloomy conditions the puddle reappears black and swimming along the pavement leading toward the lobby doors. This was not my story. It was one of many strange occurrences revolving around the Belvedere. It wasn't even one I necessarily believed, not because of any far-fetched recollection of events, but because of how little was known about the man. There was no traceable family, no job history, no societal footprint apart from a bundle of neatly wounded bills on the nightstand and a scribbled message in his breast pocket. I rest my head, cruel world. Mr. Macklin. It was as if the man had been erased. While most of these peculiar and often gruesome tales would have hammered a nail into the coffin of any self-respecting business, they seemed to only add to the hotel's mystique. Mysteries flowed out of its plastered walls. People seemed drawn to a good story, and that's all they were to most just stories. I longed to see the Belvedere since I was a little girl. Since I was old enough to shine a flashlight under the covers of my bed. I would devour pages and pages of books. The same things that kept me up at night gave me something to latch on to. Monsters and demons and ghosts and the truly unexplainable. I could imagine I was something bigger than the cramped bunk beds and empty refrigerator. I was not alone in those stories. At 18, I said goodbye to my foster home. All of my possessions were stashed into a mangled hiking backpack. After bouncing around some friends' sofas, I scraped together what little cash I could gather and decided there was no better time than now. My friend Dean was foolish enough or drunk enough one evening to agree. We packed our things and boarded a bus that following weekend. The snow-clad trees danced in the wind, the blur of nature passing by the frosted passenger windows. Torrey was a 5-hour drive from the city. Once dropped off at the town center, we ditched the quaint little shopping district and hopped on another bus. 4 stops took us to the parking lot of a large ski hill. The lot was lined with cars in all directions. We walked out back to the main road and trudged another 30 minutes through the snow, toward the road we believed would lead us to the Belvedere. The access road was littered with construction blockades. A long, undisturbed blanket of white stretched vastly into the trees. We stuck our fingers into the metal loops and shakily hopped the fence. Our boots sank with every step, snow threatening the brim of their polyester shells as we marched onward. Dean began to whistle. He did that as a front when he was retreating inward. The tune seemed to glide effortlessly through the thick expanse of forest. I know how it must have felt to someone like him trespassing down a road we knew very little about, chasing a landmark that existed in the confines of some paperbacks. This was undeniably, categorically not Dean. We were a long way from home with very little money. His parents would be so upset, and he would never say it. He didn't need to, but he was afraid. I smiled, held his hand for a moment, the sentiment scary but not lost on me. I didn't know what this was or what it could be. I just wanted to glimpse it, touch it, feel the history within its walls. All he cared about was that he was here with me, and I thank God I didn't have to do it all alone. The sun glared down in a blinding curtain of light, amplified by the blanket of powder around us. The road, it just kept on going, straight as an arrow along packed drifts of ice and snow. We hadn't noticed until I slipped on a particularly slick patch. The trees looked like tiny blotches of paint from this high up. The path had been gradually climbing. There was no indication of anything other than pure, unadulterated nature. A fresh sprinkle of snow began to fall. Maybe it's been knocked down, Dean theorized. This is quite a plot of land. They could do a lot with this. I appreciated the attempt. He didn't want me to get my hopes up. I squeezed his hand and assured him it was fine. The walk, the escape from it all, none of it was wasted, but it was hard to disguise the tinge of discouragement spreading across my face. We began to pant as the drifts got deeper, sweat dripping beneath our layers of nylon and wool. My socks began to squish beneath tiny, stagnant puddles. Some spots were like pillowy quicksand. Your foot suddenly collapsed deeper into a chute of slush and ice. We're close, I told myself. It's gotta be here. Deep down, I wasn't quite sure. I just knew I couldn't surrender to the notion that it was gone. Or even worse, that we had gotten lost. What if we abandoned the search when it was just around the next coupling of trees? We had to press forward to Dean's dismay. Thankfully, the ground began to level. Tiny track marks were left behind us amidst a sea of miniature trees. The road back was nowhere to be found. At this point, a cold front forced the tokes back on our heads. Loose snow swirling, spinning, dancing. Thick flakes began to fall, which blurred our vision up ahead. Dean's sing-song tune started up again. Some nearby branches stirred. A yelp leapt from my throat as a family of warblers sailed out from their covert shelter. But it wasn't from his whistling. There was a sound traveling from some far-off source, a twang bellowing off in the distance. I guess I didn't know what to expect. Definitely not what we'd uncovered. As the mammoth structure began to materialize behind the wall of trees, Dean's mouth was left agape. A long walkway led to the compound, de-iced and cleared of snow. We plodded forward, heart pounding, into the chorus of laughter. A cloud of classical instrumentals and muffled conversation carried back to us in the wind. The archway into the courtyard gave the impression that we were entering the confines of some ancient fortress. Cobblestone formed a center square where a fire was ablaze. Patrons had gathered around a pit, huddled around its warmth. Groups of admirers took to the more adventurous guests who donned skates and glided across the frozen surface of a nearby lake. People came and went in all directions, the wheels of suitcases toppling the ground as the 4 blocks towered over the plaza in a tidy semicircle. Mountains stretched gloriously behind them for as far as the eye could see. The whole place, the atmosphere, it was magic. I could hardly breathe. "Can I help you, madam?" My gaze was drawn to the top of the tower, to the sound. It stood above like a glorious steeple carved into a cramped quarters between brick and stone. The brass, cracked and speckled in ice and dust, floated back and forth rhythmically. The bell tolled with a resounding heavenly momentum. Clang, clang. From this distance, I could only glimpse a flicker of movement. It was so quick I nearly missed it. A shadow gathered by the tassel of rope. "Lost?" the voice inquired again. Do you have a reservation, madame? Dean shook his head and began to speak. I chopped at his arm and coughed politely. We do. Well, we'd like to speak to someone about that, actually. He grinned with crooked teeth, his mustache coated in a layer of frost. Come with me, then. I'll see what we can do. Dean hissed through a tight smile as we approached the revolving doors. Val, what the hell are you doing? I shushed him, embarrassment and panic swelling up inside of me. You know this makes no sense. We had reservations at the Sundown, a run-of-the-mill hostel sensibly catered to our budget. I could feel the springs of the mattress digging into my spine already. A mixed 6-person dorm with beige walls and questionable stains. I could see Dean's perspective, sure, but I doubt he could ever truly see mine. This was a real moment for me. A silver chandelier glistened from above the vaulted ceiling. Pelts of various wild game were strung along the intricate masonry like trophies, all of it better than I could have ever imagined. We had to try. Dean's discomfort beaconed from his eyes when the clerk handed me an actual physical key. Are you sure this is what you want? He kept a gentle grip on my waist, his smile wavering. The tassel at the end of the keyring displayed our room number. Number 1444. My mind raced as we grabbed our backpacks and followed the signage to Block 4. It wasn't the largest or most extravagant room, but it carried an old charm that made you feel at ease. Neat and tidy like your grandparents' bedroom, covered in bits of heirlooms and old artifacts that felt criminally outdated and out of place, but spoke to you in ways modern, cultivated decor could never do. We took in the snow-capped mountains, the jubilations from the square, and the smell of the fire pit floating up to our balcony. He held me close as we shared a moment together. He seemed to have warmed up to the idea, the prospect of our very own private bedroom. I left to go freshen up a bit. When I returned, Dean was standing facing the last rays of fading sunlight. No shirt, boxers flapping in the recirculated air like a bad parachute. He whispered, "Do you hear that, Valerie?" His back was to me, but his voice, it sounded different. Softer. There was something about it I didn't like, but I figured it was just fatigue. Not really, I responded. No room is perfect, Dean. I agree, but... His voice trailed off, swallowed by a bout of uncomfortable silence. He stood still. Then, with a bewildered grimace, he turned and crept toward the peephole. I followed. There was nothing but a white wall on the other side. Maybe call reception? I asked, genuinely confused. Dean walked to the nightstand and dialed, pressing the receiver to his ear. After a moment, he placed the phone back down. His head drooped and he swallowed hard. I tried my best to bring his spirits back up, but he continued to ramble on, fumbling with theories about what it could be. Some stupid children. A couple getting a little too frisky. Or worse. Something caught between the walls, thudding and banging to get free. It didn't feel like any of that. I heard nothing. Let's leave it alone, Dean, I sighed, tossing him the keys. They fumbled out of his hands. Come on, let's grab your shoes. We strolled the halls of gold and taupe rugs, sauntering around every corner and bend. Block 4 was incredibly quiet. There was an elaborate wedding in the ballroom, a young bride with an uncomfortably old groom. We eyed the staggering menu at the restaurant and opted for snacks back in our room. But we never once left the complex, no need to. There would be loads of time in the morning. Dean's mood steadily improved. He had a boyish wonder upon his face, struck by the detail of the architecture and enamored by all of the history that I was able to spew. The stone-laden castle was built in the 1800s by a steady force of new immigrants. Workers trudged through the dense remote forest and harsh winters for years. Somehow the project survived. The Belvedere family had made its fortune off the back of various infrastructure projects across Western Canada, and the hotel would be their first and only venture into the hospitality industry. It was thought to have been a present from Connor Belvedere to his second wife, Marta, only dwarfed by the chain of rocky mountains wrapped around it. Every corner and nook had a noteworthy piece of medieval grandeur and brilliance. Featuring 4 wings, a sculpted underground pool modeled after a nearby cave basin, and clever touches from Madame Luria, a renowned architect and interior designer for her time. There were famous pieces of abstract and colonial art gathered from the south of France. It was admired, adored, and unrivaled, a timeless symbol of luxury and comfort. The evening seemed to roll away from us effortlessly. We chatted through the night until the aftermath of the hike-in began to take its toll. Nestled between the memory foam and satin sheets, it was like lying on a cloud. We admired the starlit backdrop from the balcony, uninhibited by any light pollution or cloud cover, with not a care in the world. My eyelids began to flicker under the weight of the evening. Dean's body heat radiated off mine, but it still felt cold. So cold. It was an instant sweep and sleep, but it was far from restless. Our room fell into this foggy haze. Barely visible in the shadows of a bleary, dreamlike shade, the walls began to ripple. They pulsated with a gentle rhythm. Then it wasn't so much what I saw, but what I could feel. It vibrated through me in a low rumble. Whispered conversations, grumbling, shouting. Conversations that trailed off into nothingness. Thousands of visages from hundreds of years all swimming together as one. Vapors of activity, memories, emotions, everything traveled through me. I tried to shriek amidst the throbbing, bursting pressure in my skull. My will was simply not enough. My body remained stiff. I was trapped. All of the voices and visions began to overload my amygdala. My mind scampered through the grating flurry like a starving rat stuck at the dead end of a maze. It just wouldn't stop. Hearts entangling, love withering away, excitement and passion and the creeping passage of time, the minute conversations to the most visceral of fights. Everything vibrated from the walls like echolocation, and I was absorbed by its waves, consumed by the tiny space that was now ours and all of the life that had been lived here. There was a puff of breath, clammy, sour. An uncontrollable tingle ran up my spine. What felt like bristles of short stubble chafed against my neck. Foreign, unannounced. There was a weight pinned down against mine, a force in the blackness holding me down like a trap. Something told me it was not his touch. I forced another desperate, miserable shriek that never broke, free. Soon I was engulfed in an amalgamated cloud of blurred fingers and hands, creeping, gripping, moaning, rubbing against every waking space of skin. I erupted in a sudden, insatiable scream. I don't know how long I was out for when I finally awoke. The room still fell beneath a haze, but the voices had finally ceased. This time there was a whistle in the breeze. Calm and tempered, it drifted into the black quarters with a haunting ease. A vague pattern of drapes fluttered. I managed to force myself upright, my head aching ruthlessly. A shiver ran through my body. I could just make out a thin layer of snow wetting the hardwood. Dean! I called out weakly. I turned. The bed was empty. I couldn't place the thuds. Hollow and resounding and much too close to comfort. Dean? I crawled out of the covers, my mind halting my advance to an apprehensive shuffle. The thuds continued. As I approached, moonlight cast its pallid glow. The drapes were drawn just enough to reveal it. A fog upon the window. A sheath of icicles formed around the surrounding breath. Face, hands pressed up against the glass. He was smiling. Dean, come in. This isn't funny. I shuddered, barely able to feel my legs under the gust of winter air. I inched closer. More clunks echoed through the room. His head tapped the window. The figure was hunched over and eerily still. Only once I was mere steps away did the shadow retreat. He climbed the balcony railing effortlessly. Only then did he jump. There in the blustery winter evening, I stared down at the tiny star-fished imprint in the snow. The pool of blood, the limp, twisted limbs. This time my shrieks carried, rattling my eardrums. It was hard to tell how much time had passed. The snow had erased every trace of us except for some remaining bills blowing haphazardly across the hardwood. I battled through many manic bouts of rage, though I have truly screamed as much as I can scream. The walls have heard all of my pleas by now. This place, it changed. The landlines don't seem to work. Neither does the electricity. The beautiful tapestry and warm charm is cold, frigid, and covered in disgusting stains of black. I am reminded of the unforgiving winter that brutes forward dust, dirt, a charred stench all swirling together amidst the rubble. The stars looked beautiful through the collapsed support beams, but there was no end in sight. At the end of the hall was a baffling slope of crumbled rock that may have once served as a stairwell. I located the lonely elevator shaft and its rusted steel cables. It would have taken quite the traverse up the slope of ice and rock. To make your way down, I couldn't even imagine. With dwindling battery life and spotty reception, I contacted every authority that I could think of. All I received in return was static and the occasional scoff at my desperation. They've known the stories as well as any. Room number 1444. The Macklin Room. It was Dean who never got to hear it. Block 4 was rumored to have been lost in a fire shortly after the jumper incident. How it started, no one knows. Could have been as simple as a cigarette butt left untouched by a thoughtless guest, or as heinous as a cover-up. The fog never really dissipated, the arid stench of smoke domineering with a suffocating chokehold. But they were wrong. What we experienced, it was proof of that, wasn't it? Conversation from the square wafted up in a cacophony of unsettling joy. Somewhere in the distance there was the sweet hum of Dean's whistling. Somewhere in the distance there was the bell. Clang, clang. It tolled as if to remind me of the only way out. Down. The man had jumped, escaped like so many others across time and history, leaving very little answers. Could he have leapt to join something greater? Something bigger than himself? There remained promises waiting to be sealed, voices in the walls that I could not bear. They took Dean. My Dean. I feared with every passing second that it was too late, that I had become a part of it now. I pleaded and pleaded to the wind, please. Somebody. Help. Story 2 ends here now. We drift into Story 3. I get paid to answer phone calls all day, but I am only allowed to listen. We've all heard of odd jobs before, quirky social media gigs, requests from strangers on the internet, sometimes legit, mostly illegal. I want to warn you about my latest venture. The premise is simple but confusing. You are paid to answer calls, but you can only listen. If you talk back, if you say anything at all, you're done. Curious? So was I. But before I jump in, I want to set the scene for you. There's a lot of ground to cover, but I promise it'll be worth the wait. Let's start with the call center. There's a certain uneasiness in the building. It's not the lights or the computers or the AC rumbling through the white-paneled ceiling. It's deeper than that, a quiet, unnerving buzz. The longer you are here, the easier it gets, but the feeling never quite goes away. It just gets buried. Deeper and deeper into that steel case you call your mind. You'd be surprised how many people there are in this office. It's quiet. But it isn't silent, never silent. If you sit still long enough, if you really listen, you can hear them. The voices, the steady rhythm of desperation, cries, pleas, whispers, screams. They're not loud enough to disturb anyone, just soft enough to make your skin crawl, like a bad feeling you can't place. They're not coming from the workers, they're pouring out of the phones, the never-ending sea of desperate callers ringing in day after day. Every call is different, every voice is different, but the words, the stories, always the same. Please, they say. I don't know where I am. Something is outside the door. I need help. But no one responds. No one ever does. 2 cubes down, Martha, that's what I call her, is filling out a crossword. She taps her acrylic nails against her desk like she's typing away at an invisible keyboard. Then there is Debbie. Again, not her name, but she seems like a Debbie. She is tall, brunette, and eating the same cheap parfait she brings in every day. I think it's strawberry flavored. Nobody talks here, not out loud. Not unless they still want to work here. We don't wear name tags, we don't introduce ourselves, we don't even wear our own faces. Everyone's assigned a mask. Not the sanitary kind, not the Halloween kind either. They're corporate, sleek, smooth, almost artistic. I would describe it as a masquerade-style mask, without the usual glitter and tassels. They start just below the forehead and stop just above the mouth. They say it's part of the experiment. What experiment? Nobody really knows. That's kind of the whole point. We're not here to understand. We're here to follow instructions, answer the call. Don't say anything. Let them speak. Let them scream. Let them beg. Just sit there with the phone pressed to your ear and listen until the line goes dead. That's it. That's the job. It seems cheap, gimmicky almost, like we're a part of the latest reality TV series where cameramen are hiding in bushes with ulterior motives. I thought the same at first. But if there is something that doesn't lie, it's money. And lots of it. That's why I'm here. I'm Ariana, 19 years old. College dropout. A few semesters in, then I quit. Way too much debt, too little hope. Credit cards stacked like a tower ready to fall. I spent weeks scouring every corner of the internet for something, anything that could get me back on my feet, even if just for a while. That's when Mabel introduced me to her profession. Mabel was unique, always dressed sharp, nice car, good career, Chanel bag casually tossed over her shoulder. A very independent woman. She lived in the city, paid her own bills, and did whatever the hell she wanted to. She was fun, serious, and motivating all at once. We have been friends for a while now, but she always kept me at arm's length. Sure, we would go out and have a nice time together, bond over past relationships and mutual interests. but there was something mysterious about her. She never really talked about her work. I assumed it was drugs or some kind of shady side hustle. It wasn't like her to keep secrets. But when she saw how down on my luck I was, she took pity, handed me a business card, and then just as quickly told me she never gave me that card. If anyone asks you, I didn't give you that card. You don't know Mabel and Mabel don't know you, she said sharply. Apparently, that was against the company's rules. Nobody can know anyone else who works there. I was confused, but curious. I called the number. A voice answered, cold, mysterious. They asked me 2 questions. Do you break under pressure? Do you know anyone else who works here? I said no and no. That was it. No background check, no references. Didn't even ask to see the resume I carefully prepared for the occasion. They gave me an address and a time. Simple as that. The onboarding was just as strange as everything else. You'd think I was signing up for some military program or a secret government project. Everyone was tight-lipped, no smiling, no small talk. The rules were simple and unsettling. 1. Arrive at the building exactly when your shift starts. Not a minute early, not a minute late. 2. Keep your mask on the entire time. No exceptions. 3. Don't identify yourself. Don't try to identify anyone else. 4. Do not respond or speak to the caller on the other end of the line. It felt odd, to say the least, but I kept telling myself it was just one big experiment. They're paying for data, not for us to help anyone. We're not really answering calls. We're the product, being fed to someone or something higher up the chain. That is what the assessors say, at least. Assessors are basically glorified managers. People with a flashy degree and people skills that tell you the voices aren't real. That the people on the other end aren't people at all. They're artificial, synthetic, part of the test and nothing more. Simulations, they say. You're not hurting anyone. It's about resilience, exposure therapy, mental strength. Sure, buddy. I don't know what they are. I refuse to believe they are people. It wouldn't make sense. But they don't act like simulations either. They don't sound fake. They sob, they stutter, they beg for their kids. They talk about the thing outside the closet or the eyes under the bed or monster outside their window. You sit there, you listen, you grip your pen tighter and tighter until the call drops out or the screaming stops or there's that awful sudden silence like something just grabbed the person out of existence. Then you breathe, you clear your throat, and the phone rings again. You pick up. I've been here 8 months now, not long, but long enough to know the rhythm. This job isn't about smarts or motivation, it's about routine. Muscle memory. You have to build your own little rhythm. Listening to terror all day eats at you, breaks you down slowly. I've seen it happen. New masks come in wide-eyed and curious, and by month 2, their breaking rules are just gone. My routine is pretty straightforward at this point. I get in at 6:45 a.m. sharp. Same elevator, same gray carpet, same cubicle by the fire exit. I don't speak to anyone. It's safer that way. Chatter is dangerous for me and for whoever's already picking up calls. At 7 a.m., my phone activates. The light goes on. Not a ring, never a ring, just the light. Blue means wait, red means answer. And when it's red, you answer. You don't greet them, you don't ask questions, you just listen. And what you hear, well, they're always running, always hiding, always being chased by something they can't quite describe. A little boy whispering, saying something is scratching at his door. His mom won't wake up. A woman panting, saying she's in the stairwell. Something is coming up behind her fast, and the police aren't answering her calls anymore. A man with a crushed voice locked in a closet. He mutters that he hears footsteps pacing back and forth right outside, stopping every time he breathes. Different voices, same panic. Some of them say they're in a hallway or a small bedroom or under a sink. Sometimes they describe this building the call center. They'll mention glass double doors, or the color of the carpet, or the smell of coffee from a nearby break room. Sometimes they describe the workers. You have a mask, they'll say. Black gloves, I know you, you can help me. Then they scream. We're not supposed to react, not even a twitch. I've gotten pretty good at it. Neutral face, steady hands. A woman once asked me to sing to her while something chewed its way through her front door. I didn't, but I wanted to. It sticks to you, even after the call ends. Especially then. We all handle it differently. Food, puzzles, fidgeting, anything to let out the tension. To cope, I sketch what they describe, not out of interest or enjoyment, just release. Macabre maybe, but it makes the images leave my head a little faster. Dark figures, tall shadows, doorways broken and bloody. A lot of staircases, and then just when I start to forget, the light turns red again. The first few days were the hardest. But then my first check came in. After just 1 month on the job, I paid off my student loans. That crushing weight finally lifted. I felt like I could breathe again. A month later, I bought my first car, used but reliable. Then I paid off my credit card debt. For the first time in years, the numbers in my bank account weren't a burden I needed to figure out. Now, I live in a multi-bedroom loft right in the city, the kind of place with exposed brick walls and big windows that let in way too much sunlight. I'm driving the car I used to drool over in magazines, the one I thought I'd never afford. The money washes away the guilt at this point. Synthetic manufactured guilt, like a fresh coat of paint covering the grime beneath. Except the grime is just as processed as the paint at this point. Maybe that was the point all along. Just an expensive, extravagant experiment. A cold corporate bet that people will do almost anything for the right amount of cash, even if it means listening to fake snuff calls for hours on end. That's what I told myself. The calls were just noise, background static to the paycheck, until I heard something I never expected. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was halfway through my shift, eyes drifting between the crossword puzzle I'd started yesterday and the dull glow of my screen. I was a little hungover, my head still fuzzy from last night's bad decisions. Maybe that's why I was so caught off guard. Maybe that is why I made this horrible mistake. The phone turned red. I picked up instinctively, my eyes still fixed on the crossword puzzle. Hello? Is anyone there? I need help. The voice was faint but unmistakable. It was her, Mabel. For a split second, I forgot where I was. Thought maybe I'd picked up my personal phone by mistake. My heart started to hammer. Mabel, I whispered before I could stop myself. The room was quiet. Not just the usual quiet of the call center, but something heavier, thicker, like the room was holding its breath. I felt eyes on me, dozens of masked faces turned in my direction, watching, waiting. I felt my face go red as hot embarrassment washed over me. I ducked my head below my cubicle wall, phone still pressed to my ear. Shit. I was done. Then Mabel spoke again. Wait, Ariana? I wanted to hang up, but something stopped me. I just didn't understand. Why was Mabel on the line? I've heard hundreds of simulated voices plead and beg for a response. I never imagined it could sound like someone you know. I was already reaching to hang up, but she said something strange. Something unexpected. "Oh no, 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 no," she stammered, voice trembling with confusion. A cold shiver crawled down my spine. This wasn't the Mabel I knew. Then she started laughing. Not the light, friendly laugh I remembered. A manic, broken laugh. It didn't stop. I slammed the phone down. I spun around, heart racing, and there she was. A member of HR standing just at the edge of my cubicle. Black mask, notepad in hand. Expression unreadable. She motioned for me to follow. No words. Just a slow, deliberate walk toward her office. I sat down in the stiff plastic chair across from her desk, my mind still reeling. The call played on a loop in my head. The voice, the laugh, the way it sounded exactly like Mabel. I couldn't stop shaking. "You broke the rules, yes?" she asked flatly, scribbling in her notepad without looking up. "Yes, but you understand this means you are terminated from the call center, correct?" She cut me off with such finality, like it was scripted, like she was reciting lines from a procedure manual. "I recognized her," I said. "The voice. I thought I picked up my own phone by accident. I thought maybe it wasn't even..." That made her pause. She looked up for the first time. Her eyes were sharp behind the mask, almost disappointed. Or was it fear? "You thought what?" It sounded like someone I knew, a friend of mine. She didn't write anything down now, just stared at me. "When you first applied to this job, you answered 2 questions. Do you remember them?" I hesitated, my stomach turned. "They asked if I was good under pressure, and if I knew anyone who worked here." "And how did you answer?" I said no to both. She stared a moment longer, then slowly ripped a sheet of paper from her pad and slid it across the desk. "You are hereby terminated from this experiment. You can collect your final check at the location printed on this slip. You've also been granted a severance equivalent to 1 month's salary." I blinked at her. "Wait, that's all?" She didn't respond, just went back to typing. Like I wasn't there anymore. No explanation, no follow-up about the call, no mention of what I heard, just a polite termination and a severance bonus. I grabbed the paper without reading it and stormed out, past the rows of silent, masked employees, past the flickering overhead lights, and out into the daylight. I was halfway to my car when I realized I hadn't even removed my mask. I didn't look back. I felt everything over the next few days, sadness, anger, confusion, like my body kept going through the motions, but my mind was stuck on a loop. That voice on the other end of the call, the thing that sounded like Mabel. I didn't know what I was supposed to believe anymore. On the second day, I caved and called her, straight to voicemail. That was weird. We were supposed to hang out next weekend, maybe grab drinks and vent about the call center. Mabel never ghosted me, not even when she was sick or pissed or going through it. Something was off. By the 3rd day, I decided I needed to get out of the house, clear my head. The address they gave me for my severance package wasn't far, so I drove out. It led me to a hotel. One of those upscale downtown places with giant flower arrangements and staff that wore gloves. I didn't even see a front desk, just a wall of private mailboxes near the back. The code they gave me worked. The lock clicked open and inside was a check, neatly folded like it had just been printed. I left and crossed the street to the parking garage where I'd left my car. As I reached the elevator, I paused. There was someone standing on the sidewalk a little ways down, right outside the garage entrance. Big blonde hair, fur coat, tall boots. Mabel? I stepped forward without thinking, just a few feet, enough to get a better look. And that's when I saw it wasn't her. Not really. The thing looked like Mabel if she'd been made from melting wax, too tall, limping slightly. Her skin hung off her face in folds, sagging like old leather. Her mouth was slack. Her eyes, God, her eyes, two hollow pits ringed with tiny, sharp teeth. Her hands were worse, loose skin, twisted fingers bent at angles that didn't make sense. And yet people kept walking past her like she wasn't there. They moved around her, avoided bumping into her like she had a presence. She took up space, but no one looked. Not directly. They didn't see her. Not really. If they did, they would have been as terrified as I was. The elevator behind me dinged and the doors opened. I ran inside, slammed the close door button with shaking fingers. As the doors slid shut, I heard footsteps on the concrete. Slow, deliberate, getting closer, too close. I didn't look. I didn't want to see her again. The elevator dropped me off a few floors up. I got in my car and drove fast, too fast. Every red light felt like a trap. Every time I glanced out my window, I expected to see her there on the sidewalk, moving along in slow, rhythmic motion like a snail wearing human skin. I called a few friends on the way home, just to hear voices. I didn't tell them what I saw, didn't want to sound insane, but I felt insane. All those desperate calls I've been ignoring, month after month of people screaming and crying and begging. And now it's like the floodgates have opened. Everything's pouring in at once. Maybe I was having a breakdown. That's what I kept telling myself. Listening to pain and anguish every day will do that to you. I just needed rest, some air, maybe a little trip. I had money now. Enough to disappear for a few days, clear my head. And if I still didn't feel right afterward, I'd find a therapist. God knows I probably needed one anyway. I took a detour from my apartment elevator to stroll through the lobby. I wanted to grab a few snacks from the shop beside the front desk before settling in for the night. I needed a bottle or two of something strong to drown out the sadness from my termination from the call center. I was crossing the front desk when I caught sight of something in the corner of my eye. I turned and there it was again. Mabel, walking toward me from the lobby entrance. The sight gave me chills, but that feeling passed quickly. I felt steadier after the drive. More level-headed. I wasn't afraid, I was annoyed. This wasn't real. It had to be some elaborate prank, or a figment of my imagination. Either way, it couldn't hurt me. I just needed to prove it to myself. I looked around. Everyone else was just walking past. I held my hands out, desperate. Really? Nobody else is seeing this? I took a few deep breaths and started toward it. "Hey, sir, why are you following me?" I called out. The thing didn't say anything, just kept lurching forward. I stopped a few feet in front of it. The smell hit me first, sour, rotten. I winced at the sight of the bloated figure writhing and convulsing under its cheap Mabel disguise. "Did you hear me? This isn't funny, creep. I'm going to get security." Chomp. A mouth. It tore open from the thing's stomach and bit off the finger I was waving at its chest. Just like that. Gone. I staggered back, screaming, clutching the bloody stump where my finger used to be. It kept limping forward. I screamed louder, begging for help. No one looked. No one even paused. I turned and bolted toward the stairs, blood dripping behind me. I was halfway up when I heard the stairway entrance slam open. It was coming. I reached my floor and sprinted down the hall, fumbled my key out of my purse with trembling, bloody hands, got the door open, locked it behind me. I backed away until my spine hit the wall at the other end of the apartment. I pulled my phone out and started dialing 911 with my good hand. Ringtone, then silence. No connection. I checked my service. Full bars. This didn't make any sense. I called friends, family, my hairstylist. Nothing. No ringtone. Just silence. I cursed and rushed to the peephole. Nothing out there, not yet. Just a wide, empty hallway. Blood was getting everywhere. I could feel my heartbeat in my hand from all the pain and swelling. I stumbled into my bedroom, wrapped my finger to stop the bleeding, and popped a few painkillers. Once that was taken care of, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. Tried to get online, email, social media, anything, blank screen, no connection. I sat down and cried. I didn't understand what was happening. Something was wrong. Not just with that thing in the hallway, not just with me. Reality itself was broken. No one could hear me, no one could reach me, no one cared. I was isolated, trapped. Food for something that wore my friend's skin. Maybe that was all that was left of her. Then it was here. I heard a few limping footsteps outside the door. The light underneath the front door was stifled by something large standing outside it. I held my breath, waiting, but nothing happened. It just sat there, doing nothing. I grabbed a knife and waited. It was bound to come in at some point, but it didn't. Hours passed. It was well into the night and the shadow was still there. It didn't make sense. I fumbled with my phone. I needed to get in contact with someone. I knew it was futile, but I had to try again. But then I heard something. Not from the phone, from the door. It was Mabel. "Hey, Ariana, I'm here. I need your help." I didn't move. I didn't speak. It was her voice, but it sounded wet. Guttural, like it was her whispering through the mouth of a corpse. "Don't ignore me. Say something, anything. I need to know you're okay." It was monotone, no concern in its voice. I carefully walked to my bedroom, then a loud bang. "Don't walk away from me, Ariana. Talk to me." The voice was deeper now. Less Mabel, more something else. I pushed my door closed with a soft click and covered my ears as a barrage of loud bangs broke out across the apartment. I heard them everywhere. My door, the ceiling above, the windows facing the city below. The sound passed after an hour. My body was so tired at this point. Partly exhaustion, partly the blood loss from my missing finger. I barricaded my door, clutched my phone, and rested my eyes in the empty bed. I slept maybe an hour or two before something woke me. I sprang up and looked toward the bedroom door. The shadow was under my bedroom door now. It had somehow gotten into my apartment. It was standing there the same way it had outside, but now it was here. I realized I couldn't escape this thing. Whatever it was going to get me, slowly but surely. It had no issue entering my apartment. It would have no problem breaking into my room. Maybe it was toying with me. Maybe it enjoyed the chase. I felt panic wash over me. "Leave me alone," I screamed. I heard a soft laugh break out just outside the door. I returned to my phone, started calling everyone in my contact list again. Silence every time, like the world outside my apartment building just vanished. Then I realized something. I realized the silence didn't mean the calls were failing. They were going through. Every time, no ringing, no static, just quiet. Someone on the other end was always there, always listening. It was the call center. Every call I made was routed straight back to the center. I only figured it out because of a tiny, almost imperceptible sound, one you'd miss if you weren't desperate enough to listen for it. A spoon scraping the bottom of a plastic parfait cup. Debbie. From work. "Debbie," I said into the phone. No response. Of course not. Debbie wasn't her name, just the one I gave her. None of us knew each other's names. That's how they designed it. Masks, code numbers, shift schedules that barely overlapped. "Hey, I know you. Well, not know you, but we work together. Please, just say something. I think you can help me." Still nothing. And that's when it hit me. They wouldn't answer, not ever, they couldn't. We don't speak, not to them. It didn't matter what I said, how much I begged and cried. And could I really blame her? I ignored hundreds of calls just like this. That is when I broke. I started laughing, loud, cracked, borderline hysterical. The same kind of laugh I heard from Mabel that day she realized the truth, that she was calling the same people she sat next to every day. That none of us said a word. Not when it mattered. It was real, all of it. Real people, real demons. God, those poor people. Men, women, and children. The poor children. The creature outside went quiet during my breakdown. Maybe it enjoyed my pain. Maybe it was hoping I'd walk out, still broken right into its jaws. Once the laughter died and I steadied my breathing, I felt a strange mental clarity. Could have been the painkillers, or sleep deprivation. Either way, I had an idea. If they respond, the creature moves on. That was my theory. I never got confirmation from Mabel, but she had tried it. She screamed into the phone until someone broke the rules. And the thing left her alone, at least that was the hope. I needed to get someone to answer, to break the rules, like Mabel did, like I did. I racked my brain for anything I knew about the people I worked with, something, anything that could crack their armor. Then it hit me, Martha. She was always working during my shift. The one with the crossword puzzles and clacking acrylics. The only reason she came to mind was because I knew something about her I shouldn't. We do our best to hide our identities, but every now and then something slips out. A phrase, the flash of a text on your personal phone, the hint of a tattoo. Her mistake was much more telling and easy to forget. One day I saw a brochure sticking out of her purse, assisted living facility. I recognized the name. My mom had looked into it for my grandfather once. Nice place, private rooms, big windows, expensive. Probably why Martha took the job. I grabbed the phone, started dialing, random numbers, cold calling the call center over and over, same silent line, same hollow wait. I listened for her. I waited for the familiar tap of nails on the cheap plastic desk. Fast, plasticky little clicks. Call, hang up, nothing. Was Martha even on rotation today? I started to feel hopeless. Outside the room, the door handle started to twitch. A soft rattle like someone trying to figure out the lock. It would be in here soon. Then I heard it. The clacking of nails. I prepped the script in my mind. I had one chance. "Hello?" I said in the calmest voice I could manage. No answer. I take another shaky breath before continuing. "I'm calling because your family member at Woodbrooks is in the middle of a situation here. I hope this was the right angle. During my time working there, every call was frantic, desperate, just like me. But I couldn't show it, not if I expected this to work. Nobody at the call center would expect something so calm and collected. The clacking stopped. I had her attention. Now, I needed to drive it home. Sorry to call this line. Someone at the call center said it was your work line. I just need to confirm some information. Let's start with your last name. I bit my tongue as the door began to unlock. It creaked open slowly. The barricade of furniture slid across the floor like it was a pile of empty boxes. I put my hand over my mouth to stifle a scream. What stood there wasn't wearing Mabel's skin anymore. That was gone, sloughed off like wet clothing. What remained was something raw, a bundle of dark flesh, tentacles and mouths writhing in slow, deliberate motion. Snapping, smacking, clicking wetly against each other. They turned toward me slowly. The bundle of wiry flesh writhed towards me in unison. I closed my eyes and tried to keep my voice level. Ma'am, this is an emergency. If I don't get a directive right now, I will need to call 911. I felt warmth descending upon my face, 100 little mouths breathing on my skin in anticipation. Then, she spoke. "Is my mom okay?" she asked. The sound of her voice felt like a lifeline being caught in the middle of the ocean. I opened my eyes. To my surprise, the thing was gone. I caught just the tip of a black tendril vanishing around the corner toward my front door. I grabbed the phone again. "Listen, this isn't Woodbrook. I used to work with you. Something's coming for you. The call center, it intercepts your calls. You need to get someone to respond." The line went dead. I stood there, useless. I didn't even know her name, didn't know what she looked like, and yet I may have just sentenced her to a fate worse than what happened to me. Or Mabel. I felt sick. I didn't leave my apartment for weeks. I needed time to process everything. I'm in a better headspace now. You can thank a lot of expensive therapy for that. I got into this job for the money. I didn't care about the calls. I told myself they were fake, but that was a lie. The truth is, I was desperate. I don't know if I would have taken the job if I'd known what was really going on. Honestly, I probably still would have. That's what scares me, but now I have a new purpose, a better one. I'm going to end the call center. I don't know how yet, but I'm working on it. I owed it to Mabel and Martha. I don't care if I go broke, if I lose everything. There are more important things than money in this life, and this place is going to learn that the hard way. Until then, you've been warned. Don't accept a job from the call center that ignores desperate people. Real people. Scared people being chased by a real threat. I managed to make it out, but most people won't be so lucky. Most people will be hiding in their homes, crying, pleading, begging a bunch of corporate morons in masks to save them from something truly evil. But if you already work in a place like the call center, it isn't too late. If you can help, help. Don't sit idly by and listen to injustice. Don't let the corporations tell you it's all synthetic garbage. Use your own judgment. Be kind. Be curious. You may just save someone's life. Story 3 ends here. Now, listen closely to story 4. And my dad spent 15 years tending to the tree in our backyard. I just cut it down, and I don't think it was a tree. I don't know where else to turn. I can't talk to my mom about this. She's already a wreck. I can't talk to my dad because, well, he's the reason I'm writing this. I did something and I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was saving him. But now the house is filled with a silence that is so much worse than the screaming I wish I could hear. And I see the look in my father's eyes, and I know I've made a terrible, terrible mistake. I need help. I need someone to tell I need to do. We live in a nice house, the kind of place people move to when they want a family. A big yard, a picket fence, flower beds my mom fusses over. It was a normal, happy place to grow up, until the tree. It all started about 15 years ago. I was 10. My dad came home from work one day absolutely buzzing with an energy I'd rarely seen. He was a quiet man, a decent man, worked a steady job in logistics, and his passions were small and manageable. He loved gardening. It was his escape. On this day, he was holding a small, wrinkled paper bag. "Look at this," he said, his eyes shining as he showed me a single gnarled black seed. It was the size of a pigeon's egg, strangely heavy and covered in faint spiral patterns. Got it from a street vendor downtown. An old fella said it was special, said it would grow into a great tree, a king in our yard. Said it would cast its shadow over the whole house and protect us. I was 10. I thought it was cool. My dad was a sane, rational man, but he always got a bit poetic when he talked about his garden. I just figured he was exaggerating to make his only kid excited. We planted it together in the center of the backyard. It was a good memory, one of the last purely good ones, I think. The tree grew, and it grew fast, faster than any tree has a right to grow. Within a couple of years, it was already taller than me. My dad was ecstatic. He tended to it like it was some kind of deity. He built a small, neat wooden fence around its base, not to keep animals out, but it seemed to designate its space as sacred. No one else was allowed to water it. No one else was allowed to prune it. Not that it ever seemed to need it. It was his. For years, my mom and I just accepted it. It was Dad's hobby, his thing. When he was out in the yard, kneeling by the tree, we knew that was his time. We didn't interfere, we didn't think much of it. But the tree kept growing, and as it grew, my dad started to change. Subtly at first. He'd spend more and more time out there. He'd come in for dinner with dirt under his fingernails and a distant, peaceful look on his face. He started talking about the tree not as a plant, but as a presence. "The tree is well today," he'd say. "It enjoyed the rain." We'd just smile and nod. By the time I was in my early 20s, the tree was a monster. It was a species none of us recognized. Its bark was a smooth, dark gray, almost black, and its leaves were a deep, waxy green that seemed to drink the sunlight. It towered over our 2-story house, casting a vast, profound shadow over the entire backyard for most of the day. And that's when we really started to notice the wrongness. The first sign was the other plants. My mom's prize-winning roses, the vegetable patch, the cheerful little flowers she planted every spring, and anything that fell under the tree's shadow for more than a few hours a day would wither and die. The soil beneath it became barren, gray, and hard as rock. Then, the animals. Birds stopped nesting in our yard. The squirrels that used to chase each other across the lawn vanished. Even our family dog, a golden retriever, would refuse to go into the backyard. He'd stand at the back door whining, his tail tucked between his legs, refusing to set a single paw in the shadow. But the worst change was in my father. His obsession became his entire existence. He quit his job. He said he needed to be home to attend to the tree. He'd spend all day from sunrise to sunset sitting on a small bench he'd built directly under its densest branches. He just sat there. Sometimes we'd see him from the kitchen window, his head tilted as if he were listening to something. Sometimes his lips would move, and we knew with a certainty that made us sick that he was talking to it. My mom and I tried to reach him. We pleaded, we begged. "Honey, please," my mom would say, her voice breaking. "Come inside, eat something. You look so thin." He'd just shake his head, a slow, placid smile on his face. "I'm not hungry. The shadow is enough. It's so peaceful here. It comforts me. It can comfort you too if you just come and sit with me." We never did. There was something about that shadow. It wasn't just a lack of light. It felt cold. It felt heavy. It felt hungry. Standing at the edge of it felt like standing at the shore of a deep, dark ocean. You knew you shouldn't step in. The last weeks were the breaking point. He stopped coming inside at all except to sleep in his chair in the living room for a few fitful hours. He was wasting away. His skin was pale and waxy, his eyes were sunken, but they held a serene, vacant glow that terrified me more than any anger could have. He was being consumed. The tree was eating him alive, and he was letting it. I decided I had to do something. I had to save him. The tree had to go. I waited until night. I watched through the window until he finally, reluctantly came inside and slumped into his armchair, falling into his usual restless sleep. The house was silent. My mom was asleep upstairs. This was my chance. I grabbed the heavy wood-splitting axe from the garage. My hands were sweating, my heart pounding a frantic, terrified rhythm against my ribs. I stepped out the back door. The yard was bathed in the pale, ethereal light of a full moon. But the ground beneath the tree was a pit of absolute blackness. I stepped into the shadow. The cold was immediate, shocking. It wasn't a natural cold. It was a deep, draining cold that seemed to pull the warmth directly from my bones. I walked to the base of the tree. Its smooth black bark felt strangely slick to the touch and almost like skin. I raised the axe. As the metal head touched the bark, I heard it. A whisper, right beside my ear, a voice that was both male and female, old and young. It was a rustle of leaves and a sigh of wind and a voice all at once. "Don't!" I stumbled back, my heart seizing in my chest. I looked around wildly. The yard was empty. I had to have imagined it. It was the wind. It was my own fear talking back to me. It had to be. I steeled myself, spat on my hands, and swung the axe with all my might. Thwack! The sound was dull, wet, not the sharp crack of axe on wood I was expecting. It felt like hitting a side of beef. The axe bit deep into the trunk. I wrenched it free, and a dark liquid black in the moonlight began to ooze from the gash. I ignored it. I swung again, and again, and again. I fell into a frantic, desperate rhythm, sweat pouring down my face, my muscles screaming. The wet, fleshy thud of the axe, the splatter of the dark sap, the deep, draining cold of the shadow. It was a nightmare. With every swing, the ooze from the gash flowed more freely. The coppery, metallic smell of it filled the air. It was a smell I knew, a smell that had no business being here. It was the smell of blood. I touched the sticky liquid with my fingers, brought them to my nose. It was blood. Thick, dark, real blood. Panic stark and absolute seized me. I wanted to run. I wanted to drop the axe and flee and never look back. But then I thought of my father, of his vacant, smiling face, of him wasting away on his bench. I couldn't stop. I had to finish it. I screamed a raw, wordless sound of rage and fear, and I put everything I had into the last few swings. The gash widened. The tree groaned a deep, shuddering sound that seemed to shake the very ground. And then, with a final tearing shriek of splintering matter, it fell. It crashed into the yard with a ground-shaking boom, its great branches shattering my mom's empty flower pots. Silence. The shadow was gone. I was panting, leaning on the axe, my body trembling with exhaustion and adrenaline. My eyes were drawn to the stump, to the place where I had cut it. I pulled the small flashlight from my back pocket and aimed the beam at the wound. The inside of the tree wasn't wood. It was a chaotic, fibrous mass of what looked like dark red muscle and pale, glistening sinew, all woven around a central, horrifying core. Where I had cut the tree in half, I had also cut it in half. Embedded in the center of the trunk, integrated into its very being, was the torso of a human being. I could see the curve of the rib cage, the shape of the spine, the pale, rubbery look of preserved flesh. I had cut it clean through. The dark blood was still pouring from it, soaking into the ground. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. My mind simply stopped. What was this? Who was this? Was this what my father had been talking to? Burn it. The voice came from behind me. It was quiet, raspy, and broken. I spun around, my flashlight beam cutting wildly through the darkness. My father was standing at the edge of the patio. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring at the fallen tree, at the mangled, bleeding stump. And the expression on his face, it was the most profound, gut-wrenching sadness I have ever witnessed. The vacant serenity was gone, replaced by a grief so deep it looked like it had cracked his very soul. "Dad," I whispered. "We have to burn it," he repeated, his voice hollow. "All of it. Now." We worked together in a grim, silent ritual. We hacked the branches in the great trunk into manageable pieces. We dragged them into a pile in the center of the yard. My father moved like an old man, his newfound clarity costing him all his strength. He never once looked at the horrifying thing at the heart of the trunk. We doused the pile in gasoline, and my father threw the match. The fire went up with a roar, a greasy black smoke that smelled of burning meat and something else, something acrid and deeply wrong. We stood there for hours watching it burn until the great tree that had dominated our lives was nothing but a pile of glowing embers in a scorched black circle on the lawn. I thought I had saved him. I thought I had cut out the cancer that was killing him, but I was wrong. It's been a week. The tree is gone. The shadow is gone. My father, he's inside. He eats what my mom puts in front of him. He sleeps in his own bed. He's physically present, but he's not here. The obsession is gone, but the peace, twisted as it was, is gone too. It's been replaced by a constant humming anxiety. He paces the house. He stares out the window at the empty space in the yard. He jumps at every unexpected sound. He doesn't speak, not a single word since that night. He just looks at me sometimes with those haunted, broken eyes, and I feel like I'm the monster. I destroyed the thing that was consuming him, and in doing so, I seem to have destroyed him too. I traded a smiling zombie for a silent, terrified ghost. What was that thing? What did I do, and how do I fix my dad? Is there any way to bring him back from whatever edge I've pushed him over? Please, if anyone has any idea what happened here, tell me. The silence in this house is getting louder every day. Story 4 ends here, and now we enter the fog of Story 5. My new neighborhood has only one rule: never, under any circumstances, help a lost pet. The house was a steal. That should have been the first red flag. A 3-bedroom craftsman with a wraparound porch for less than the cost of my cramped 2-bedroom apartment. It was in a quiet, secluded subdivision called Maple Creek, where all the lawns were impossibly green and the neighbors waved with all 5 fingers. The HOA president, a woman named Carol with a smile as bright and hard as a porcelain doll's, met me on my first day. She handed me a welcome basket with a bottle of cheap Chardonnay and a single laminated sheet of paper. "We're so glad to have you, Mark," she said, her eyes crinkling in a way that didn't seem genuine. "We're very relaxed here at Maple Creek. We don't have rules about lawn height or fence colors. We only have one." She tapped a perfectly manicured nail on the laminated sheet. On it, in a large, friendly font, were the words, "Rule number 1. If you see a pet that appears lost or in distress, do not approach it. Do not feed it. Do not let it into your home. Go inside, lock your doors, and ignore it until it is gone." I laughed, thinking it was a joke. "What, are the raccoons organized crime around here?" Carol's smile didn't waver. "It's not a suggestion, Mark. It's the only thing we require of you. It is for the safety and harmony of the community." Her tone was light, but her eyes were deadly serious. It was the first time I felt a chill in the warm afternoon air. For the first month it was perfect, quiet, peaceful. I almost forgot about the bizarre rule. I'd see people walking their dogs on leashes, cats sunning themselves on porches. They were clearly owned, clearly where they were supposed to be. The rule seemed like a weird quirk from a bygone era. Then came the storm last night. It was a real gully washer with thunder that shook the windows and rain that came down in sheets. It was around midnight when I heard it, a sound that cut through the noise of the storm. A pathetic, high-pitched whine. I peered through my living room window. Huddled under the eave of my porch, shivering and soaked, was a golden retriever. It was beautiful, with big, sad eyes and a leather collar, but no tags. Every time the thunder cracked, it would press itself against my door and cry. My heart broke. The laminated card was sitting on my counter, and Carol's words echoed in my head. "Go inside, lock your doors, and ignore it." But how could I? It was just a dog, a scared, lost animal. What was the worst that could happen? I'd be breaking some stupid, arbitrary rule from a power-tripping HOA president. So I did it. I opened the door. The dog practically fell inside, shaking a puddle onto my hardwood floor. It looked up at me with such gratitude, nudging its wet head into my hand. I got it a towel and a bowl of water, and it immediately settled down on my rug, letting out a contented sigh. I felt a wave of relief. See? Just a dog. I fell asleep on the couch watching TV. I was woken up a few hours later by a sound that wasn't the storm. Knock, knock, knock. A slow, deliberate knock on my front door. The rain had stopped. The dog on the floor lifted its head, let out a low growl, and then strangely trotted to the door, its tail giving a single lazy wag. I looked through the peephole. Standing on my porch was a man. He was tall, impossibly tall, dressed in a neat, old-fashioned suit like a door-to-door salesman from the 1950s. He was smiling, a wide, friendly smile that showed too many teeth, all of them perfectly straight and white. I opened the door a crack, my hand still on the chain. "Can I help you?" "Good evening," the man said, his voice smooth and pleasant. "I do apologize for the late hour. I believe you found my dog." He gestured with his head toward the retriever, who was now sitting patiently at his feet, looking up at him. "Oh yeah, he was out in the storm," I said, my relief making me feel foolish for ever being scared. "Glad you found him." The tall man's smile widened, stretching his face in a way that felt unnatural. "He has a habit of getting out. He's a bit of a rascal." He leaned forward, his eyes dark and unblinking, locking onto mine. "But he's very good at his job." My blood ran cold. "His job?" The man chuckled, a dry, rustling sound. He reached down and patted the dog's head. "Of course," he said, his gaze never leaving mine. "His job is to find the kindest person in the neighborhood." He straightened up, his towering frame seeming to block out all the light from the porch. "Thank you so much for your hospitality," the man said, his smile finally reaching his eyes, which now glinted with a terrifying, hungry light. "He likes you very much. He's decided he wants you to meet the rest of the family." My mind screamed at me to slam the door. Slam it, lock it, run! But my body wouldn't obey. I was a statue, my hand frozen on the door. The man's smile never faltered as he gave the door a gentle push. The brass security chain didn't snap or break. It stretched, elongating like taffy with a soft, metallic groan before falling away, limp and useless. "There now," he said pleasantly. "That's better." He didn't enter. He simply took a step back and gestured with an open palm toward the street. It wasn't a command. It was an invitation. And for reasons I can't explain, I found myself stepping out onto the porch. The golden retriever trotted ahead of us, its tail held high. The air was different out here. The storm had washed everything clean, but the world felt muted, like I was looking at it through a pane of smoked glass. The streetlights cast long, distorted shadows that seemed to writhe and twist at the edges of my vision. As we walked, I noticed other things. A sleek black cat emerged from beneath a hedge, its eyes glowing with a faint phosphorescence. It fell into step beside the retriever. A few houses down, a parrot was perched on a mailbox. It didn't squawk or speak, it just swiveled its head, tracking our progress in perfect silence. They were all moving with us, an honor guard of silent, watchful animals. I looked at the houses we passed. Through their big picture windows, I could see my neighbors. They were frozen in place like mannequins in elaborate dioramas. One family was sitting around a dinner table, forks raised halfway to their mouths. In another house, a man was stopped mid-stride, one foot hovering over the floor. They were all facing our direction, their faces blank, their eyes wide and vacant. "Don't mind them," the tall man said, noticing my gaze. "They're very good at following the rules." We were heading toward the end of the cul-de-sac, to the oldest house on the block, a large colonial that had been dark and seemingly empty since I'd moved in. As we got closer, I could feel a low vibration through the soles of my shoes, a deep hum that seemed to emanate from the house itself. The golden retriever led the procession up the walkway and sat patiently before the heavy oak door. The other animals formed a silent semicircle behind us, their eyes all fixed on me. The tall man walked to the door. It swung open before he touched it, revealing nothing but a deep, impenetrable darkness inside. The low hum grew louder, resonating in my bones. It sounded like a purr. A gigantic, hungry purr. The man turned to me, his smile as wide and terrifying as ever. He gestured into the blackness. "After you," he said. "They've been so looking forward to this.